The morning sun was just starting to peek through the windows of Lincoln Preparatory Academy when 16-year-old Destiny Williams walked through the front doors. She clutched her backpack straps tight, the way she always did when she felt nervous. Today was the day. The results from the state science competition were finally coming in, and Destiny had been waiting for this moment for weeks. Lincoln Prep was not the kind of school Destiny ever imagined herself attending. It was one of those fancy private schools with perfectly trimmed lawns, students wearing pressed uniforms, and families who drove cars that cost more than her mother made in 2 years. The hallways smelled like money and old traditions. Portraits of former students hung on the walls, most of them going back generations. And if you look closely at those portraits, you would notice something. Almost every single face looked the same. Almost none of them looked like Destiny. She was one of only 12 black students in a school of over 800. And she was the only black student in the advanced placement chemistry class. Getting into Lincoln Prep had not been easy. Destiny had spent her entire middle school life studying harder than anyone she knew. While other kids were playing video games or hanging out at the mall, she was at the library. While her classmates complained about homework, she was asking teachers for extra assignments. She wanted more. She needed more. And when she scored in the top 1% on the entrance exam, Lincoln Prep had no choice but to offer her a full scholarship. Her mother, Regina, had cried when that acceptance letter came. She worked as a nursing assistant at a hospital downtown, often pulling double shifts just to keep the lights on. There were nights when Destiny would wake up at 2 in the morning and find her mother just getting home, her feet swollen and her eyes heavy with exhaustion. But Regina never complained. She would always say the same thing. "Everything I do is for you, baby. You're going to be somebody." Destiny carried those words with her every single day. The bell rang, and she made her way to room 214, AP Chemistry, the class she both loved and dreaded at the same time. She loved it because science made sense to her. Formulas and equations were like puzzles, and Destiny had always been good at puzzles. But she dreaded it because of the teacher. Mrs. Crawford had been teaching at Lincoln Prep for over 20 years. She was a tall woman with silver hair always pulled back in a tight bun. Her glasses sat at the edge of her nose, and she had a way of looking at students that made them feel small. She rarely smiled, and when she did, it never quite reached her eyes. From the very first day of class, Destiny had felt something off about the way Mrs. Crawford treated her. It was nothing obvious. Nothing you could point to and call out. It was the little things. The way Mrs. Crawford would skip over Destiny's raised hand to call on someone else. The way she would double-check Destiny's homework when she never did that with other students. The way her eyebrows would raise just slightly whenever Destiny answered a question correctly, as if she was surprised. As if she expected Destiny to fail, Destiny had learned to ignore it. She told herself that the best revenge was success. She would prove herself with her work, not her words. The state science competition had been her chance to do exactly that. It was a prestigious exam taken by the top chemistry students from schools across the entire state. Thousands of students participated. The questions were brutal. Most students were happy just to pass. But Destiny had studied for this exam like her life depended on it. For 3 months, she had dedicated every spare moment to preparation. She borrowed textbooks from the public library because she could not afford to buy them. She watched free lecture videos online until her eyes burned. She filled notebook after notebook with practice problems. Some nights, she studied until 3 in the morning, then woke up at 6 to study some more. Her mother would bring her cups of tea and sandwiches, whispering words of encouragement before heading off to another long shift. Now, finally, the results were here. Mrs. Crawford stood at the front of the classroom, holding a stack of papers. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something different in the air today. A tension that Destiny could not quite explain. "Before I hand these back," Mrs. Crawford began, her voice slow and deliberate, "I want to acknowledge something remarkable. Someone in this class achieved a score that has never been accomplished in the 45-year history of Lincoln Preparatory Academy." The room went silent. Students exchanged glances, eyes wide with curiosity. Someone in this room, Mrs. Crawford continued, received a perfect score. Whispers erupted. A perfect score was almost unheard of. The exam was designed to be impossibly difficult. Even the smartest students in the state usually missed at least a few questions. Destiny's heart began to pound. She thought about all those late nights, all those sacrifices. Could it really be possible? Mrs. Crawford began walking down the rows, placing papers face down on each desk. Destiny watched as student after student flipped their results over, some sighing with relief, others groaning with disappointment. The closer Mrs. Crawford got to her desk, the harder Destiny's heart pounded. Finally, the paper landed in front of her. Destiny took a deep breath and turned it over. 100%. Perfect score. For a moment, she could not breathe. She read the number again and again, making sure her eyes were not playing tricks on her. But it was real. She had done it. All those nights, all that hard work, all those moments when she wanted to give up but kept pushing anyway. It had all been worth it. She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. She wanted to call her mother right then and there and tell her that every sacrifice had paid off, but before she could do anything, she felt a shadow fall over her desk. Mrs. Crawford was standing right beside her, staring down at the paper. Her face had changed. The thin smile she had worn while announcing the perfect score was gone. In its place was something harder, something cold. "Destiny," Mrs. Crawford said, her voice low enough that only the students nearby could hear. "I need to see you after class." Destiny looked up, confused. "Is something wrong?" Mrs. Crawford did not answer. She simply walked back to the front of the room and continued the lesson as if nothing had happened. The next 45 minutes felt like torture. Destiny could barely focus on anything Mrs. Crawford was saying. Her mind raced with questions. Why did Mrs. Crawford look at her like that? What could possibly be wrong? She had earned that score. She knew she had. When the bell finally rang, students filed out of the room, chattering about the exam results. A few of them glanced at Destiny with curious looks. She stayed frozen in her seat, waiting until the room was empty. Mrs. Crawford closed the door. Then she turned to face Destiny. Her arms crossed over her chest. "I'm going to be very direct with you," Mrs. Crawford said. "There is no way you achieve that score legitimately." Destiny felt like she had been punched in the stomach. "What?" she whispered. "I have been teaching for over 2 decades, Mrs. Crawford continued. I know what students are capable of, and I know when something does not add up. Mrs. Crawford, I studied for months. I worked harder than I have ever worked in my life. I earned that score." But Mrs. Crawford was already shaking her head, as if she had made up her mind long before this conversation started. "I am recommending that you retake the exam," she said, "under supervision. If you truly earned that score, then you should have no problem proving it." Destiny's eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but from anger, from disbelief, from the crushing realization that no matter how hard she worked, some people would never see her as anything more than a girl who did not belong. "This is not fair," Destiny said, her voice trembling. Mrs. Crawford opened the door and gestured for her to leave. "We'll see about that." Destiny walked out of that classroom feeling like the ground had been pulled out from under her feet. Her legs felt weak. Her hands were shaking. She could barely see straight because her eyes were blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Not here, not in front of everyone. She would not give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her breakdown. She made it to the bathroom at the end of the hallway and locked herself in a stall. Only then did she let the tears come. They fell hot and fast down her cheeks as she pressed her back against the cold tile wall and slid down to the floor. Her chest was heaving. Her mind was spinning. She kept replaying Mrs. Crawford's words over and over again. "There is no way you achieve that score legitimately. How could someone say that to her? How could someone look at all her hard work, all her sacrifice, all those sleepless nights and dismiss it as cheating? What did she have to do to prove herself? What would ever be enough?" She thought about her mother working those double shifts. She thought about the worn-out textbooks she had borrowed from the library because they could not afford new ones. She thought about every single moment she had chosen studying over sleeping, learning over resting, pushing forward when everything inside her wanted to quit, and none of it mattered. Not to Mrs. Crawford, to her. Destiny was just another black girl who could not possibly be that smart. The bell rang for the next class, but Destiny did not move. She could not face anyone right now. She needed a moment to breathe, to think, to figure out what she was going to do next. But what she did not know was that the damage had already started by lunchtime. The whispers had spread through the school like wildfire. Destiny did not know how it happened. Maybe one of the students sitting nearby had overheard Mrs. Crawford. Maybe someone had seen her being asked to stay after class. Maybe it was just the way gossip worked in places like Lincoln Prep, where everyone knew everyone and secrets did not stay secret for long, whatever the reason. The story had changed by the time it reached the rest of the students. In the original version, Destiny had been accused of cheating, but as it passed from mouth to mouth, it became something worse. Now people were saying she had been caught. They were saying she had confessed. They were saying she was going to be expelled. None of it was true. But that did not stop people from believing it. When Destiny finally walked into the cafeteria, she felt the shift immediately. Conversations stopped. Eyes turned toward her. Some students whispered behind their hands. Others did not even bother to hide their stares. A group of girls near the window burst into laughter. Glancing in her direction, Destiny kept her head down and walked toward the table where she usually sat with her friends. There were two girls she had grown close to over the past year. They were the only people at this school who had made her feel like she might actually belong. They studied together, ate lunch together, and sometimes hung out on weekends. Destiny had started to think of them as real friends, but when she reached the table, something was wrong. Both girls looked up at her with strange expressions. One of them shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The other suddenly became very interested in her phone. "Hey," Destiny said softly. Setting her tray down, there was an awkward silence. Destiny, one of the girls finally said, not meeting her eyes. "We actually need to study for a test right now. Maybe you could sit somewhere else today?" The words hit Destiny like a slap across the face. She stood there for a moment, frozen, waiting for one of them to say they were joking. But neither of them looked up. Neither of them said anything else. Destiny picked up her tray and walked away. She found an empty table in the corner of the cafeteria and sat down alone. She did not eat. She could not. Her stomach was twisted in knots, and there was a lump in her throat that would not go away. She just stared at her food and tried to pretend like she could not feel the eyes of the entire room on her back. This was not fair. None of this was fair. The rest of the day was more of the same. In every class, she felt the stares. In the hallways, she heard the whispers. Someone bumped into her between periods and muttered something under their breath that she could not quite hear but knew was not kind. By the time the final bell rang, Destiny felt like she had been beaten down in every way possible, without anyone ever laying a hand on her. She walked home that day instead of taking the bus. She needed the time to clear her head. The walk was long, almost 45 minutes, but she did not care. The fresh air felt good on her face. The rhythm of her footsteps helped calm her racing thoughts. By the time she reached her apartment building, she had made a decision. She was not going to tell her mother. Not yet. Her mother had enough to worry about already. She did not need this added stress. Destiny would handle it on her own. She would take the stupid exam again, prove that she earned her score, and put this whole nightmare behind her. But when she walked through the front door, she knew immediately that something was wrong. Her mother was sitting at the kitchen table. Her phone was in her hand, and her face looked like it had aged 10 years since that morning. When she looked up at Destiny, her eyes were red and swollen. "Baby," Regina said, her voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" Destiny's heart sank. "Mama, what happened?" "The school called me at work today." Regina's hands were trembling. "They said you cheated on some test?" "They said you might be expelled." They asked me if I wanted to come in and discuss your options, like maybe if you just confess, they'll go easy on you. I didn't cheat. Destiny's voice came out louder than she intended. Mama, I swear to you, I didn't cheat. I earned that score. I studied so hard. You saw me. You were there every night bringing me tea and telling me to get some sleep. You know how hard I worked. Regina stood up and crossed the room. She wrapped her arms around her daughter and held her tight. Destiny could feel her mother's body shaking, could hear the quiet sobs she was trying to hold back. I know you didn't cheat, Regina whispered into her hair. I know, my baby. I know what you're capable of. I have never doubted you for a single second. They stood there for a long time, holding each other in the middle of that small kitchen. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the muffled sounds of traffic outside. In that moment, it felt like the whole world was against them. Like they were standing on one side and everyone else was standing on the other. Finally, Regina pulled back and looked her daughter in the eyes. There was something different in her expression now. The sadness was still there, but it had been joined by something else. Something stronger, something fiercer. Listen to me, Regina said, her voice steady now. I have worked too hard and sacrificed too much to let anyone take this away from you. You are the smartest, most hardworking person I know. And I don't care how big that school is or how much money those people have. We are going to fight this. Destiny shook her head. Mama, what can we even do? It's my word against hers. And she's been there for 20 years. Everyone trusts her. Regina wiped the tears from her daughter's face with both hands. Then we'll make them see the truth. You're going to take that test again, and you're going to show them exactly who Destiny Williams is. And when you're done, they're going to have no choice but to admit they were wrong. Destiny looked at her mother. This woman who had given up everything for her. This woman who worked until her body ached and still found the strength to come home and be there for her daughter. This woman who had never once stopped believing in her, even when the whole world seemed determined to tear her down. Okay, Destiny said quietly. Okay, I'll do it. Regina nodded and pulled her close again. That's my girl, she whispered. That's my girl? Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn honked. Life in the city continued on as usual, unaware of the battle that was about to begin, but inside that small apartment, a mother and daughter were preparing to fight for something that should never have been questioned in the first place, the truth. The next few days were some of the hardest of Destiny's life. Going to school felt like walking into a battlefield every single morning. The whispers never stopped. The stares followed her everywhere. People she had never even spoken to seemed to have already made up their minds about who she was and what she had done, but Destiny kept going. She woke up every morning, put on her uniform, and walked through those doors with her head held high. It took everything she had. Some days she wanted to quit. Some days she wanted to tell her mother that she could not do this anymore, that the weight of it all was too heavy to carry. But then she would think about her mother's words. She would think about all those sacrifices. And she would find the strength to take one more step. The date for the retake was set for Friday. The school had arranged for everything to be as official as possible. There would be a proctor from the district office overseeing the exam. There would be cameras recording the entire session. And of course, Mrs. Crawford would be there, watching Destiny's every move. The night before the exam, Destiny could not sleep. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with 1,000 different thoughts. What if she failed? What if the pressure got to her and she could not remember anything she had studied? What if she proved everyone right? She turned over and looked at the stack of notebooks on her desk. Months of work. Months of dedication. All of it leading to this one moment. Around midnight, there was a soft knock on her door. Her mother stepped inside, still wearing her work scrubs. She had just gotten home from another long shift, but instead of going straight to bed, she came to check on her daughter. Regina sat on the edge of the bed and gently brushed Destiny's hair away from her face. Can't sleep? she asked softly. Destiny shook her head. I keep thinking about tomorrow. What if I mess up? What if I let you down? Regina smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. Baby, you could never let me down. I don't care what happens on that test tomorrow. I know what you're capable of. I've seen it with my own eyes. But more than that, I know what's in your heart. And that's something no test can measure. But what if it's not enough? Destiny whispered. What if I prove them right? Regina took her daughter's hand and held it tight. Listen to me. You are not taking that test to prove anything to them. You're taking it to prove something to yourself. You already know the truth. Tomorrow, you're just going to show it to the world. And when you walk out of that room, you're going to walk out with your head held high, no matter what anyone else thinks. Destiny felt the tears building in her eyes, but she blinked them back. I'm scared, Mama. I know you are, Regina said. And that's okay. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you keep going even when you are. She leaned down and kissed Destiny's forehead. Now get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a long day, and I'll be right here waiting for you when it's over. Destiny closed her eyes, and somehow, with her mother's words echoing in her heart, she finally drifted off to sleep. The next morning came faster than she expected. Destiny woke up before her alarm, her stomach tight with nerves. She got dressed slowly, taking her time with each button on her shirt. She looked at herself in the mirror and took a deep breath. You can do this, she said to her reflection. You earned that score. Now prove it. Her mother made her a big breakfast even though Destiny could barely eat. She forced down a few bites of toast and eggs, knowing she would need the energy. Then Regina walked her to the door and pulled her into a long hug. I'll be praying for you every second, Regina whispered. Now go show them who you are. The walk to school felt different that morning. The air was crisp and cool, and the streets were quiet. Destiny focused on her breathing, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside her. By the time she reached the front doors of Lincoln Prep, she felt strangely calm. Not confident exactly, but ready? Whatever was going to happen, she was ready to face it. The exam was being held in a small conference room on the second floor. When Destiny arrived, she found 3 people already waiting inside. Mrs. Crawford was seated in the corner, her arms crossed and her expression cold. A man in a gray suit sat at the front of the room. He introduced himself as the district proctor and explained that he would be monitoring the exam to ensure everything was conducted fairly. In the corner of the room, a small camera sat on a tripod, its red light blinking steadily. Destiny took her seat at the single desk in the center of the room. The desk was empty except for a pencil and a thick packet of papers turned face down. You will have 3 hours to complete the exam, the proctor said. You may not leave the room for any reason until you are finished. Do you understand? Destiny nodded. You may begin. She turned the packet over and looked at the first question. For a moment, her mind went blank. The words on the page seemed to blur together, and she felt a flash of panic rise in her chest. But then she took a breath. She thought about her mother. She thought about all those nights studying until her eyes burned. She thought about every person who had ever doubted her, every whisper in the hallway, every look of suspicion. And then she got to work. The first question was tough, but she knew the answer. She wrote it down carefully, double-checking her work before moving on. The second question was harder, but she had studied this exact concept just 2 weeks ago. She remembered the formula, remembered the steps, and worked through it piece by piece. As the minutes ticked by, Destiny found her rhythm. The fear began to fade, replaced by focus. This was what she had trained for. This was what all those sleepless nights had prepared her to do. She could feel Mrs. Crawford's eyes on her the entire time. She could feel the weight of that stare, the suspicion, the doubt. But she did not let it break her concentration. She kept her head down and kept writing. 1 hour passed. Then 2. Destiny worked through problem after problem, equation after equation. Some questions made her pause and think. Others came easily. But she never gave up. She never stopped pushing. When she finally reached the last question, she felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. Her hand was cramped from writing. Her eyes were tired. But she was almost there. She read the question carefully. It was a bonus question, one of the hardest she had ever seen. It required combining multiple concepts and thinking in ways that went beyond the standard curriculum. Most students would skip it entirely, but Destiny did not skip it. She worked through the problem slowly, writing out each step with precision. It took her almost 20 minutes, but when she finally arrived at the answer, she felt something click into place. She knew it was right. She set her pencil down and looked up. "I'm finished," she said. Mrs. Crawford stood up immediately and walked over to collect the exam. She did not say a word as she picked up the packet and flipped through the pages. Her expression remained unreadable, but Destiny thought she saw something flicker in her eyes. Surprise, maybe? Or was it doubt? The proctor thanked Destiny for her time and told her the results would be available in 3 days. 3 days. It felt like an eternity. Destiny walked out of that room with her legs shaking and her heart pounding. But as she stepped into the hallway, she felt something she had not felt in days. Hope. She had done everything she could. She had given it her absolute best. Now all she could do was wait. 3 days later, the results came in. Destiny had not just passed. She had scored 102 out of 100. The bonus question had pushed her over the top. It was the highest score the district had ever recorded. When Mrs. Crawford saw the results, her face went completely pale, and for the first time in weeks, Destiny smiled. The news spread through Lincoln Preparatory Academy faster than anything had ever spread before. By the end of the day, everyone knew. The girl they had whispered about, the girl they had called a cheater, the girl whose friends had abandoned her and whose name had been dragged through the mud, had just made history. 102 out of 100. The highest score the district had ever seen. Destiny walked through the hallways that afternoon feeling like she was floating. For the first time in weeks, the whispers were different. People were not looking at her with suspicion anymore. They were looking at her with something else: shock, disbelief, and for some of them, shame. She did not stop to talk to anyone. She did not need their apologies or their sudden change of heart. She just wanted to go home and tell her mother. When she walked through the front door, Regina was already there waiting. She had taken off work early, something she almost never did. The moment she saw her daughter's face, she knew. "You did it," Regina whispered. Destiny nodded, and then the tears came. But they were not tears of sadness this time. They were tears of relief, of joy, of finally being able to let go of all the weight she had been carrying. Regina wrapped her arms around her daughter and held her tight. They stood there in the middle of the living room, crying together, laughing together, holding on to each other like they would never let go. "I knew it," Regina kept saying. "I knew it. I always knew." But the story was not over yet. In fact, it was just beginning. 2 days later, Destiny received a message from the principal's office. She was being asked to attend a meeting the following morning. Her mother was invited as well. The message did not explain what the meeting was about, but Destiny had a feeling she already knew. That night, neither of them could sleep. They sat together on the couch, talking about everything and nothing, trying to prepare themselves for whatever was coming next. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Regina said, "I want you to know how proud I am of you. Not because of that test score, but because of who you are, because you never gave up, even when the whole world was trying to push you down." Destiny leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Mama." The next morning, they arrived at Lincoln Prep 30 minutes early. The campus was quiet, most students not yet arrived for the day. Destiny and Regina walked into the main office and were escorted to a large conference room she had never seen before. Inside, several people were already seated around a long wooden table. The principal, Mr. Henderson, sat at the head. Beside him was a woman Destiny did not recognize, a tall woman in a navy blue suit with kind eyes and silver earrings. And at the far end of the table, sitting with her arms crossed and her jaw tight, was Mrs. Crawford. Destiny felt her stomach clench when she saw her teacher, but she did not look away. She held her head high and took her seat beside her mother. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "I want to introduce Dr. Patricia Lawson. She's the district superintendent and has been overseeing the investigation into the events surrounding Destiny's exam results." Investigation. The word hung in the air like a storm cloud. Dr. Lawson nodded and opened a folder in front of her. "Let me be direct," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Over the past week, my office has conducted a thorough review of everything that occurred. We examined the original exam results, the retake results, the video footage from the supervised session, and all communications related to this matter." She paused and looked directly at Mrs. Crawford. "We also reviewed emails sent by Mrs. Crawford to other faculty members regarding Destiny's performance." Destiny glanced at her mother. Regina's face was still, but her hands were clenched tight in her lap. Dr. Lawson continued. "Those emails revealed a troubling pattern. In them, Mrs. Crawford expressed doubt about Destiny's abilities long before the exam took place. She questioned whether Destiny belonged at this school. She suggested that students who receive scholarships should be held to higher scrutiny than those who pay full tuition." The room was silent. Destiny could feel her heart pounding in her chest. "Most concerning," Dr. Lawson said, "is that Mrs. Crawford never once questioned the scores of any other student. In over 20 years of teaching, she has never requested a retake for anyone. Until now." Mrs. Crawford's face had gone red. She opened her mouth to speak, but Dr. Lawson held up a hand. "You will have your chance to respond. But first, I want to make something very clear." She turned to face Destiny. "Young lady, what happened to you was wrong. You were publicly accused without evidence. You were forced to prove your innocence in front of cameras like a criminal. Your reputation was damaged, your friendships were destroyed, and your mental and emotional well-being were put at risk. All because one person decided that someone who looked like you could not possibly be that smart." Destiny felt the tears rising again, but she blinked them back. She needed to hear this. She needed to see it through. Dr. Lawson turned back to Mrs. Crawford. "Patricia, do you have anything to say?" For a long moment, Mrs. Crawford said nothing. She sat there, stiff and silent, her eyes fixed on the table in front of her. Then slowly she looked up. "I was following my instincts," she said, her voice tight. "I've been teaching for over 2 decades. I know when something doesn't add up." "Your instincts were wrong," Dr. Lawson replied. "And they were shaped by bias, whether you want to admit it or not." Mrs. Crawford's face twisted. "That's not fair. I have treated all my students equally. The evidence says otherwise." Another silence filled the room. Mr. Henderson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Regina reached over and took Destiny's hand, finally. Dr. Lawson spoke again. "Based on our findings, I am recommending that Mrs. Crawford be placed on immediate administrative leave pending a full disciplinary review. The school board will make a final decision regarding her employment in the coming weeks." Mrs. Crawford's face went white. For the first time since Destiny had known her, she looked genuinely afraid. "You can't do this," she said, her voice shaking. "I've given 20 years to this school." "And in those 20 years," Dr. Lawson replied, "how many other students did you treat this way? How many other young people did you push out before they ever had a chance to prove themselves?" Mrs. Crawford had no answer. Dr. Lawson closed her folder and stood up. "This meeting is adjourned." "Destiny, Mrs. Williams, I want to personally apologize on behalf of the district for what you have been through. No student should ever have to endure what you experienced. I hope that moving forward, this school will learn from this and do better." She extended her hand to Regina, who shook it firmly. "Thank you," Regina said quietly. "Thank you for believing her." "The evidence believed her," Dr. Lawson replied. "I just made sure people saw it." As they walked out of the conference room, Destiny felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Not just the weight of the accusation, but something deeper. Something that had been pressing down on her for as long as she could. Remember, the weight of always having to prove that she belonged. She still had that weight. It would probably never go away completely. But today, for the first time, she felt like she had won. Not just for herself, but for every kid who had ever been told they were not good enough. For every student who had been judged by how they looked instead of how hard they worked. For every person who had been doubted before they even had a chance. Outside, the sun was shining. The air smelled fresh and clean. Destiny took a deep breath and looked at her mother. "We did it, Mama," Regina smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "No, baby. You did it. I just held your hand." They walked to the car together, side by side, mother and daughter. And as they drove away from Lincoln Prep, Destiny looked back at the building one last time. She had walked into that school as a girl with something to prove. Now, she was leaving as someone who had proven it, but the story was not over yet. Because what happened next would change her life forever. Destiny thought the story would end there. She thought she would go back to school, finish the year quietly, and move on with her life. But the world had other plans. It started with a local news station. Someone at the district office had leaked the story to a reporter, and within days, a camera crew showed up at their apartment building asking for an interview. Regina was hesitant at first. She did not want her daughter's face all over the news. She did not want Destiny to become some kind of symbol or spectacle, but Destiny surprised her. "Mama," she said, "if telling my story helps even one kid out there who's going through the same thing, then it's worth it?" Regina looked at her daughter for a long moment. This girl who had grown up so fast. This girl who had faced things no child should ever have to face and had come out stronger on the other side. She nodded slowly. "Okay," she said, "but I'm going to be right there with you." The interview aired on a Wednesday evening. Destiny sat in their small living room, wearing her school uniform, speaking calmly and clearly about everything that had happened. She talked about the accusation. She talked about the loneliness. She talked about her mother's sacrifices and her own determination to prove herself. She did not sound angry or bitter. She sounded like exactly what she was. A young woman who had been through the fire and refused to be burned. By Thursday morning, the story had gone viral. News outlets from across the country picked it up. Websites and blogs shared it. Social media exploded with comments and reactions. People were outraged by what had happened to Destiny. They were inspired by how she had handled it. Her name was everywhere. And then the letters started arriving. At first, it was just a few. Colleges and universities reaching out to express their admiration and offer information about their programs. But within a week, the trickle became a flood. Scholarship offers poured in from some of the most prestigious schools in the country. Full rides, complete financial packages. Opportunities that Destiny had never even dared to dream about. One envelope came from a university she had only ever seen in movies. The letter inside was handwritten by the dean of admissions himself. He told her that her story had moved the entire faculty. He told her that they would be honored to have someone with her courage and intelligence as part of their community. He told her that a full scholarship was waiting for her whenever she was ready. Destiny read that letter 3 times before she believed it was real. But the letters that meant the most to her were not from colleges, they were from kids. Young girls and boys from all over the country who had seen her story and felt seen themselves. They wrote to tell her that they had been through similar things. They wrote to tell her that her courage had given them hope. They wrote to tell her that because of her, they were not going to give up. One letter came from a 12-year-old girl in Texas. She wrote in big, loopy handwriting on lined notebook paper. "Dear Destiny, I am the only black girl in my class, and sometimes people make me feel like I don't belong. But when I saw you on TV, I thought maybe I can be like her. Maybe I can show them too. Thank you for being brave. You are my hero." Destiny cried when she read that one. She kept it in a special box beside her bed, along with all the others. As the school year came to an end, Lincoln Prep announced that they would be holding a special ceremony to honor outstanding students. And they wanted Destiny to speak. At first, she was not sure she wanted to do it. The thought of standing in front of all those people, including the students who had whispered about her and the teachers who had looked the other way, made her stomach turn. But then she thought about that little girl in Texas. She thought about all the other kids out there who needed to hear that they mattered. And she said yes. The day of the ceremony arrived on a warm afternoon in late May. The auditorium was packed with students, parents, and faculty. Destiny sat in the front row, her mother beside her, waiting for her turn to speak. Her hands were trembling, but she kept them folded in her lap where no one could see. When her name was called, she stood up slowly and walked to the podium. The room fell silent. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on her. She could see familiar faces in the crowd. Students who had once been her friends, teachers who had doubted her. And somewhere in the back, a few reporters with cameras. She took a deep breath and began. A few months ago, I was told that I did not earn my success. I was told that someone who looked like me could not possibly achieve what I achieved. I was made to feel like a criminal for being smart. I was forced to prove my innocence in front of cameras while the people who accused me faced no consequences at all. The room was completely still. No one moved. No one whispered. I am not standing here to ask for your pity, Destiny continued. And I am not standing here to ask for your apology. I'm standing here because I want every single person in this room to understand something. She paused and looked out at the crowd. There are kids out there right now who are being told they are not good enough. There are kids who are being judged by how they look, where they come from, or how much money their parents make. There are kids who work twice as hard just to be seen as half as worthy. And I want those kids to know something. Her voice grew stronger. You belong, you matter. And no one gets to decide your potential but you. She felt the tears building in her eyes, but she did not stop. My mother taught me that success is not given. It is earned. And sometimes earning it means fighting through things that are not fair. It means standing up when everyone wants you to sit down. It means believing in yourself even when no one else does. She looked at her mother in the front row. Regina was crying, but she was smiling too. To every kid out there who has ever been doubted, who has ever been pushed aside, who has ever been made to feel like they do not belong, I want you to hear me. Keep going, keep fighting, keep proving them wrong, because your excellence is your answer. And one day you are going to stand somewhere just like this and show the world exactly who you are. The auditorium erupted. People rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. Destiny stood at the podium, tears streaming down her face, feeling something she had never felt before. Not just pride, not just relief, but purpose. She walked off that stage knowing exactly who she was and exactly what she was meant to do. Years later, Destiny graduated from one of the top universities in the country with a degree in biomedical engineering. She went on to develop affordable medical technology for communities that had been forgotten by the healthcare system. She started a foundation to support young students from underserved backgrounds, giving them the same opportunities she had fought so hard to earn. And every year, she returned to schools across the country to share her story. She told kids about the teacher who refused to believe in her. She told them about the mother who never stopped believing. And she told them about the moment she realized that no one else's doubt could ever define her worth. As for Mrs. Crawford, the school board voted to terminate her employment. She never taught again. Some lessons, Destiny often said, are not learned in classrooms. They are lived. They are fought for. And they are earned, and that was exactly what she had done. She had earned her place in the world, and no one could ever take that away from her.